Hello everyone, this is Menz here. I'm going to be testing out the new Tier 10 Russian heavy tank, the Object 705A here. This is on the 9.22 test server, so things could change with, between now and then to when it releases, but more or less this tank, you know, it looks pretty well balanced to where it's got a ton of frontal armor, 650 damage gun, not much gun depression to work with because you have a rear mounted turret. And mobility, while it is faster than its closest comparison, the PZ7 at the top of the German heavy tank line, you know, it's not the fastest heavy out there. It's faster than the PZ7, but not fast in general. Now, the armor is kind of the main trait of this tank that people are going to want to abuse. It's got pretty damn good armor. Not just compared to the PZ7, but Tier 10 in general. I'll go over the specific armor stats after the match here. Like, I just bounced a heat shell from him, but that was on my upper plate. Basically, the upper plate is going to be virtually impenetrable, except for like really crazy shots chucked at it, or if you lose a little bit of angling. The lower plate can be penetrated if it's flat on against some rounds, but alright, thanks dude. Granted, I did just kind of pull in front of him, but whatever. But it's a test server. Let's get shot at here and see how it goes. That guy's a little bit mad. I did pull out in front of him, but anyway. I think a lot of people are going to like this tank because you do have a lot of armor, you got a pretty hard-hitting gun, and decent mobility to kind of go along with it. Now, penetration on the standard round is about 256, and then you have 310 for heat. So it's not anything like crazy. You know, it's definitely good penetration for the heat round, but in the grand scheme of things, there are higher pen rounds at tier 10. I'm trying to let him shoot my lower plate to see if I can deflect it angled here, but I'll try to give that guy a whack. But one thing to note on this tank, as far as angling goes, you can angle it, but not too much because you will be penetrated basically at your front track wheel if you angle too far. You know, you have a crap ton of armor to where the strength of this is, you know, angle it a little bit, you know, try not to get hit in the side when you're beneath auto bounce angles. I'm having a little bit of trouble here, honestly, figuring out where I want to push because, you know, everyone's throwing gold rounds. It's the test server, so it's kind of hard to like test armor per se, since, you know, literally everything you're going to get hit with is a premium round. Now the 430U, that's also a new tier 10. You know, as you see, I guess bounced off the cupola there. That tank has pretty damn good armor as well. It does have a couple small little bits on the cupolas that you can pen, but for the most part, you're gonna have a very difficult time actually penetrating it. Alright, let's move on up here. They pushed that corner back, so fortunately that guy's gonna die. Like the 430U, even though its armor is pretty, I guess I had a little bit of lag. Even though the armor is pretty good, you can penetrate it. I don't have the gun depression right now. Crap. And he's actually angled. I might actually die here. It does have spaced armor. Please don't hit my lower plate. He's aiming at my side right now with HE. I swapped over to AP to see if I can punch through his side armor, but who knows, this 430 might be able to pop me here. You don't really have any turret weak spots, kind of like the IS-7. The hatches are very minuscule, to where someone actually hitting you in a hatch is, you know, few and far between. Crap, I'm tracked now. But the space armor runs right, you know, it's this little bit here, where that's where I hit that other Object 705A. See, he's gonna try to whack me. But this patch is introducing a lot of tanks with, especially at high tiers, with a lot of armor. Like the Object 268 V4 here is also, oh god, I'm dead, is also a tank with a ton of armor. So let me hop out of here and get to comparing the tanks here. Not exactly a fantastic match by any means, but let's get a move on it here and compare it to specifically the PZ7, since that's the closest tank to compare it to. It's not really a great comparison to say like the IS4 and IS7, but I can add those in just for comparison sakes. So let's get to comparing these. I do have to fix these guys just to get them. I'm going to be doing 100% crew, no equipment, no paint, no crew skills, just so everything is basically more or less the same, because people change different crews, stuff, or equipment, crew skills, stuff like that. So anyway, Object 705A here, specifically comparing it to the PZ7, you'll notice 650 damage per shot, so one of the highest alpha heavy tanks now at tier 10. You have like the E75 at 750 damage, the Type 5 heavy with its HE derp gun. Penetration, 256 is a little bit low, but it is higher than say the IS7, a little bit lower than the PZ7. When you get to the premium round, 310 for the Object 705A. Comparing that to the PZ7, which is the APCR, it's even lower than that as far as the APCR shell. And let me actually move my webcam here as well too for when we get down later. And then comparing it to like the IS4 that does have a heat shell, that's 340. So you do have somewhat low penetration for a premium round, but you have a lot of other stats to kind of make up for that. Rate of fire, since the alpha is different, because skipping down to DPM, the base DPM here, 2,247 is higher than the PZ7s, however lower than the IS4s, and basically, it's 9 higher than the IS7. So nothing special DPM wise. It's in line with other tier 10 heavy tanks. Getting to the turret traverse, has pretty good turret traverse, so you can keep your armor pointed where you want to. Gun depression, -5 degrees, which is the lowest out of all the tanks here in a comparison. 2 worse than the PZ7 that I think that this tank is the closest comparison to. So overall, the gun, it hits hard, 650 damage. Accuracy too is worse, and the aiming time isn't all that great either, but it is better than IS4 and IS7. So the gun really lends itself to fighting close up. If you're against things with a lot of armor, you will struggle a little bit. 310mm heat round will go through a lot of things. If you, like the last match I was fighting on kind of uneven terrain where couldn't hit their lower plates and their weak spots, to where you will struggle not being able to have like 340mm of pen like the IS4, but 310 is still plenty. 256 for your standard round isn't bad either. But the accuracy of 0.42 is, kind of holding you back a little bit with actually hitting where you want to. So this will struggle a little bit against other heavily armored tanks. Hit points, 2,450, a little bit lower than the PZ7 and the IS4, but a little bit higher than the IS7. Overall, this is, a little bit above average for a tier 10 heavy tank. Whole armor, the values here don't paint a very good picture, but whole armor wise, I would say it's definitely better than the IS4, definitely better than the IS7. PZ7, I would say it's a pretty good comparison to. It does have thicker armor on the PZ7, but the Object 705A here is pretty well angled. Turret armor is better though on the 705A than the PZ7. Both are practically immune to shots frontally, but 705A will be a little bit better at deflecting shots from especially like premium rounds, where PZ7 you can punch through a few places with heat if you're lucky. Mobility is where things start to kind of change here. I'm gonna basically just go with the PZ7 here for mobility. Since they're practically the same tank, more or less playstyle. So engine power is definitely stronger. Your specific power is 15 on the 705A compared to 10 on the PZ7. Top speed's also 7 kilometers an hour higher. There's no really hidden, fumbles in the hidden kind of track terrain resistance values that sometimes can make a tank slower. I kind of forgot what I was about to say there. So the 705A is definitely faster than the PZ7. The terrain resistance isn't really going to hold it back. So as far as, traverse speed, they're the same as well. So it is noticeably faster than the PZ7. When it hits top speed, 7 kilometers an hour faster, but also the specific power is much better. Concealment, it has basically the same concealment as the IS-7 and IS-4, better than the PZ-7, but really these values don't matter much. And only 390 meters of view range, which is slightly less than other tier 10 heavies. But this tank's mainly meant to fight close up towards the line, so it doesn't matter much, but it is, it is something to kind of point out there. Looking at the tank here frontally, so what you're going to have as far as armor goes, the upper plate is 340 millimeters effective, looking dead on in the front without adding any more angles in. There's no weak spots as far as hatches and stuff on it either. The lower plate is 244 millimeters effective, which tier 10s will be able to penetrate that, which is why you want to angle slightly. And if you lose any bit of angling on it, of course it's much easier to pen, but pretty much there's like a 60% chance more or less for tier 10 heavies and say tier 10 mediums and stuff to pen with standard rounds. The kind of angled bits here that you can see from the front, you're never going to pen them unless they're angled. But angling the tank a little bit here, you'll basically be able to get the lower plate if you angle it just slightly to where you're not bringing basically this little angled bit. You're not bringing this to where it can be penetrated easily. This is all side armor here, and the side hull is only 100 millimeters thick. So as long as you keep this somewhat, just a little bit angled, say like 10-15 degrees, not too much more, or else this gets a little bit weaker than you'd like, and they can pen you down here if it's not auto bounce. You can get the lower plate to where it will deflect pretty much everything thrown at it outside of some really lucky tier 10 premium tank destroyer heat rounds, premium rounds, stuff like that. But everything else will bounce off the lower plate. So this is a really good side scraper to where if you're just kind of putting this up to a corner or a rock or something and poking out, nothing's going to be able to pen you, because virtually the entire turret front is immune to everything thrown at it. The weakest area is a very small flat strip, it's minute, and also right around the gun, which is about 330 millimeters effective armor. So only premium rounds or really lucky shots can punch through. And the hatches, looking at how small they are, they're actually not really that weak. They sit, looking at on my other screen here, they sit minimum 300 millimeters effective armor. So even if you do hit a hatch, you're not going to penetrate it. There is a little bit of a bump up on the roof. Basically, once you get past, this will be a little easier. Once you get past this front thick armor here, this area is 60 millimeters thick, so you can HE here, or you can also HE kind of, onto the engine deck right past the upper glacis, and that sits at 40 millimeters thick here. So really this tank, it has a lower glacis weak spot. If you can't hit that, or if the driver's angling, they're not angling to where you can punch through here, you're not going to be able to penetrate this thing very well. So that's the main strength of it. Let me hop into another battle here, and comparing it to the PZ7, the tier 10 German heavy tank. The problem with that tank is, most people know, it has kind of that turret bulge on the side of the tank, to where when you do side scrape and angle it, that becomes a pretty good weak spot for people to hit you in. It's pretty clear where it is, and it's fairly easy to hit, especially at close ranges, but at long ranges it can be hard to actually hit it. So that's one difference, to where since this tank doesn't have kind of a side weak spot, given that you do have that little angled bit in between the front and side hull right here, but this is all space armor, and then the side's just 100mm stick to the back flat after that, so it's much easier to actually side scrape in this. Of course I get a grand battle map here, so this will be fairly interesting. I'm actually tempted to run to the other side, but I'm just gonna go to the side here and see if I can angle off like a boulder or something. But in the grand scheme of things, the 705A is definitely going to be, a pretty good tank for public battles, to where it will struggle, with its .42 accuracy, kind of the base stat. Like right now I have Brothers in Arms and equipment on a rammer, optics, and vertical stabilizer. So the reload time of 15.27 can be a little bit lower if you use food instead of a fire extinguisher, or if you use ventilation. I wouldn't use food on this tank. Personally I don't use it on any of my tanks because I just play public battles. But since the engine is located in the front and people will be trying to spam gold through your lower plate, you will take quite a bit of engine damage in this compared to other tanks. Most people know that rear mounted tanks like this, they kind of are susceptible to getting penned like that and taking frontal engine damage. But in the grand scheme of things, this is going to be it's going to be a different tank kind of put into the game. It's kind of a retake on the PZ7, but it's done a little bit better to where it can side scrape better, has a harder hitting gun. However, you do lack overall accuracy and also a little bit of penetration, so it is kept in line to where you can soak up a ton of damage in this thing, especially if you can hide that lower plate, but you're gonna have a little bit tougher time dealing with those other heavy tanks that are gonna be trying to take you out. Yeah, I'm just going with full heat here because everyone else is throwing just pure premium rounds on the test server. It's how it goes every time. But in the grand scheme of things, is this tank actually worth getting it? You do have to keep in mind that there are two tanks before it, the IS-4M and the Object 705 at tier 9, to where both of those tanks, they play very similarly to this. And, more or less, there's nothing terribly wrong with either one of those tanks, to where if you like rear-mounted tanks with quite a bit of armor for their tier and fairly hard-hitting guns that work up at closer ranges, you're gonna like this tank line. And as far as how it works in, say, like competitive play, like clan wars and stuff, it's hard to say. I would probably say that you might see some of these, but not very many, only because, the DPM on it is slightly lower than some other tanks, and the lack of gun depression makes it, it can't fight across a lot of areas on the map. But the one plus side of it is, given that virtually the entire front, say if you're not angled, the only spot you're going to get penetrated from premium rounds more or less is the lower plate. Once you start angling and side scraping, you take that lower plate out of contention, and it is pretty much immune to most shells thrown at it. So it's kind of like a, it's like a bunker with no gun depression, more or less. So you're not going to be able to flex across the map. However, you will be able to kind of dig in where you need to be and kind of hold back a few tanks if you don't get flanked. Because once you do get flanked, the armor, while it is, it's thicker than, say, like T110E5 on the side and rear, it's not thick enough to stop, tier 8 plus tanks if they get around to your side and rear of this tank. Alright, so we're getting clobbered. I'm driving towards the center. Like, it's a test server, I don't care too much about winning here. I'm just driving towards where most tanks are going to be able to shoot me. Let's see. if I can actually... I'm hoping someone doesn't end up flanking me before I kill this 430. Because my goal is to push right into their massive blob of tanks there. And hope for the best. Even though they're gonna... maybe they're not gonna cap. Surprise! Alright, let's get a little bit of people here to shoot me. Definitely gonna die here. Oops, I hit his spaced armor there. I kind of forgot about that. It's got that little side space armor where it's not going to really do much against, say, AP, heat, stuff like that, but it will give you a pretty good protection against heat rounds, just given the space between. Trying to angle a little bit here. He's doing the same. I've got AP loaded though, so... Ah, crap. I shot too early. He's shooting HE though, so that helps me out a little bit. But... crap. Now I got heat loaded, so I actually gotta... get that shot lower. Crap. He's still shooting HE. Never mind. I thought he was going to hit me with heat. Will I be able to reset? I'm not sure. Oh crap, that guy gets reset though. That was actually a pretty good hit. I actually have my last heat round here. However, I'm going to take a crack at... There we go. His turret, since he does have that side spaced armor. Alright, so it's 1 versus... I don't even know how many tanks at this point. My last stand. Or no, it's 2. There's a T-100 still here. Oh, and I missed. I'm kind of sad now. Now I'm ammo racked and tracked. I don't have repair on this, so... I don't think I'm going to be able to move from this spot unless I'm extremely lucky. Yep, here comes a big bad E100 finish me off. Oh well. I was hoping for greatness there, and it did not happen. But anyway, you know, it's a pretty fun battle here. 4K damage, only 1200 block, but heat rounds... You know, they will be the bane of this tank, to where most people will fire heat at them. Now, one thing to keep in mind that, you know, on the test server, that's mostly what you're going to see. So if you do pop on here to test this tank, you know, kind of, this guy's going to drown himself. Keep in mind that, you know, it's going to be a little bit different than a regular server. Overall, though, the Object 705A, though, you know, I think it's going to be a pretty fun tank for a lot of people. As far as how easy it is to play, the gun depression will make it a little bit difficult, along with the accuracy and kind of the somewhat lack of penetration. But in the grand scheme of things, it hits hard, has a lot of armor, mobility's decent. You know, it's not really going to hinder you that much. So at the end of the day, it's going to be a pretty damn good tank. But anyway, thank you very much for watching this video. Hopefully you enjoyed kind of the preview of the Object 705A here. Have a very nice day. See you around.